We are on.
Can we stand for the pledge, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. I think
Please.
we have great visitors. Yeah. For the viewing audience out there, which will be viewing tomorrow, I understand it's a delayed recording. It's great to see everybody in person. I know everybody has been working very, very, very hard on this comprehensive plan. It's come a long way, and it's great to be able to work with you all. I know John would probably like to say a few words. That's all I have, I think. John, do you have anything you want to say?
I do not.
All right. I think for the sake of efficiency, turn it over to you, Liz.
Okay. Hello, my name is Liz Axelson. I'm a planning consultant to the Town of Fishkill Comprehensive Plan Committee. The Town of Fishkill Comprehensive Plan Update, or CPU Committee. I work for CPL. It's a architectural and engineering firm, and I've had the pleasure of working with this committee so far, all on Zoom meetings, getting lots of fabulous input. So far, this committee has created a survey questionnaire that was provided online and in paper for the public to fill out, and we got some great responses from the public and the community. And now we've begun the process of actually creating the plan update document. So I'm not going to do any more about that for now, and I guess it'd be great if we could go around the table. Do you guys want to start over there with Don? Introduce yourself.
Just speak in the microphone.
Yeah, sure. Don Prestula, Fishkill.
Eddie Colon, Fishkill.
James Walker, Historical District of Glenham, Fishkill, New York.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Cantor. I'm chair of the Town of Fishkill Planning Board and a resident live over near Dutchess Stadium, and I love it here in Fishkill.
Hi, Jackie Bardini, former council member, live in Dutchess Junction.
Greg Titino, Secretary to Town of Fishkill Supervisor Ozzie Albra, Ad Hoc Communications Director and Secretary for this committee.
Megan LoCicero from Drake Loeb PLLC. We are the attorneys for the committee.
John Foreman, member of the town board, and I live on the Old Castle Point Route 9D corridor.
Brian Rye, town board member, and I'm on Florence Avenue, and proud to be here.
Kevin Swoboda, Fishkill.
Karen Finnegan, Fishkill.
Fred Cantor, old guy. Also on the planning board.
Glenn Loudon, Fishkill.
And we have one more member of the CPU who needs a place.
Yeah, let's set up. Where can we scooch? Right on this end?
Yeah, bring up a chair.
They're scooching. Just in time to introduce yourself, sir. Grab the microphone.
Mike Justice, Town of Fishkill.
Glad to see you, Mike.
Help yourself.
Huh. So the drinks are in the cooler by the table.
It's dinner. It's dinner, not lunch.
No, he said thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much.
Enjoy. We just need to know where you live so we can send you an invoice.
Okay. So welcome, everybody. It's exciting to be here with everybody in person. So the committee worked for many months so far. I don't even remember we began. September
of last year, our introductory meeting.
September 2021, right. And as I said, the committee really worked hard on crafting a questionnaire for the community, very, very much personalized to issues of interest coming from folks in the community and getting put together. It was 35 questions. It was pretty involved. They really created a great questionnaire. It was really hard to put on SurveyMonkey, but it was so worth it because of the results that came back. So now what I have created for you to start to work on is an outline. We had started looking at an outline early in the process just to give an idea of what our task is here, which is the town has a comprehensive plan, fully detailed maps, detailing existing conditions and objectives, many, many objectives in the 2009 comprehensive plan. And this is a comprehensive plan update. So the goal here is to look at, since the 2009 plan, what has been accomplished, and actually a lot has been accomplished, a lot of code changes that now regulate how land development is done. And there's more to do. So as a result of the responses from the survey questionnaire, some of the top priorities had to do with traffic, transportation, concerns about people being able to get around however they needed to get around, by car, pedestrian, biking, folks who need transit because maybe they aren't driving anymore, don't have a car. And then there are still some, remaining issues beyond that that are of a high priority. There's still a big concern about great design of the built environment. And so what's happened is the comprehensive plan from 2009 had a certain order of priorities. And a lot of what was up front had to do with environmental resources and preserving. And as I said, many of those things ended up being incorporated in the code. So things like wetlands, recently aquifers and historic resources, trees, vegetation, better development design. Some of the Dutchess County Greenway guides are incorporated in the Town of Fishkill Code, both in the chapter on zoning and in subdivision and in the wetlands regulations. So a lot of that was done. So basically what happened here is I took an outline from the order of the old plan and changed it to put other things up front and put some of the things that have been accomplished a little further down the line. And what the committee has in front of them, and I'm expecting them to have many comments and to comment any way they see fit, is an outline that starts with an introduction and a vision. And these two pieces were also created by the committee. I know that early in the process, Jonathan Cantor raised the issue of a vision, and I think we came up with some sample visions. I think I created a sort of a Mad Lib. In other words, it was a vision statement, but it had blanks in it to be filled in. And then a few people wrote vision statements. And so the first part of this is an introduction that talks a little bit about what is Fishkill all about. And the vision statement talks about what do we want Fishkill to be. And the next part of the comprehensive plan update will be a summary of the survey results. So we'll try to put that just in, kind of a few points about what did people come out and say in response to the survey. We have both online survey results and paper survey results. In other words, folks got paper copies of the survey and filled them out. They've been tabulated, and they need to be added to the overall results of the survey with the online survey results. And the next big chunk of the comprehensive plan update is goals, objectives, and strategies. That's similar to what was in the comprehensive plan of 2009. And anyway, so the first few chapters, I'm going to just go over the topics as they show up in order without babbling too much about what they're about. So the first topic is a goal to connect people and places with a network of roads, sidewalks, pedestrian paths, and bicycle trails to reduce traffic congestion and enhance quality of life. And then there's a series of objectives under that, more specific, having to do with each of those items. And then the next big objective is promote good design of the built environment and also to streamline the review process for projects that promote smart growth. And again, there are more specific objectives after that. This section also highlights where there are some things that are already in the code of the town or already part of the town's practices regarding land development, but also comes up with some new objectives. C is create great places for people, and that's kind of coupled with another section D, create gateways. Those were both in the older plan. They were kind of buried way at the end. But given the energy that came from the survey about places, about getting around, about walking and pedestrian and parks being connected and all that, it seemed like those should follow right after those. So like A through D is kind of all about how are people getting around and moving and getting places. And then E is, the goal is to ensure economic and social diversity. And this one is a combination of accommodating the housing needs of a spectrum of community residents and also starting to encourage efficient building materials. And again, these objectives are from the old plan, but we're going to be adding some new ideas and information to that. And then I'm skipping over to page 12. F, a goal to conserve critical lands. We're going to have to revisit that at some point and maybe highlight some of the existing parks and open lands that are already in the community and pinpoint what are we looking for next, or how are we connecting these things. Let's see. And then I'm skipping over to 14, preserve special significant environmental resources. There may be some more to do with that. A lot of the objectives under here, you're going to see that I'm noting that there are mechanisms already in the zoning and subdivision code to protect those things. But I know that there was some interest in protecting, doing more with large-scale wetlands as maybe a critical environmental area. And then H is emphasize scenic and historic stewardship. And that was also in the older plan, but it was up front, so now it's kind of moved down the line a little bit, but there's more to do there. I, on page 17, is to raise community awareness. J is coordinate with the school districts, which I know that the committee talked about early in this process. And also, another goal, work cooperatively with neighboring municipalities. And just on that point, when the committee was contemplating doing the survey, they chose to make it a community survey because the town isn't just who lives here, it's who shops here, who visits here, who comes to see their mom here or one of their kids that lives differently or goes to school here or goes to one of the parks here or shops here, whatever works, rents. So the survey tried to really reflect the fact that the town of Fishkill it is about its residents, but it's also about the people that are coming and going and enjoying or working or whatever in Fishkill. So that's my rundown, and I want the committee to know that I gave you a clean copy, which is the result of all those changes, of rearranging all those sections. So you can see what the clean item looks like. In other words, I'm drafting it and handing it to you saying, I think this is the order it should be in. You may not agree, and we can talk about that as part of this discussion. But then you also have what I will call the tracked changes version. I know some people refer to it as the red line version, but I don't like that word because it means something else, so I call it tracked changes. Yeah. Yeah. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see markups. For example, the first page is all underlined and in red. I don't know, is this camera's running, right? Okay, good. And it shows that there's new text right up in the first several pages. And then if you go to the end, say, yep, if you go to, say, page 18 of 30 in the tracked changes version, you can see stuff that was deleted because it got moved somewhere. So that's kind of my quick overview. I don't want to talk too much because I would really like to hear from the committee. I'm going to send you the clean version as a Word document in case you want to mess around with it a little bit, and we'll put all those things together. And just a quick game plan. John and I were talking today about timing on this. August is kind of a vacation-y month. I think it would be great if we could hold a meeting, I think it's Wednesday, August 24th. It's not the same week as Labor Day. So it's not the week leading into that weekend. So I thought that might be okay for folks.
It's the fourth Wednesday.
It's the fourth Wednesday. It'll be the only meeting in August. And then we're hoping to hold 2 meetings in September, which would be the 14th and 28th. So, and that's going to be, and that will also give me time to take some input from tonight and keep working on this to give you even more, get all the way through it. The other thing I brought tonight, which I've spread around, are some maps I created this afternoon, and I just want to orient you to those. Why did I do those maps? If you go to page 2, item A1, these are a list.
Hey, Liz?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if people have access to their calendars, and is there a majority here that feel August 24 is good for them?
I'm good.
Yes.
Well, we can't do the 17th because we have a board meeting.
Right.
And the 31st is a little close to Labor Day, so that's why we came up with the 24th.
Understood.
That is going to be a live meeting, or?
I think a live
I
meeting.
think we're looking for live meetings from this point forward, correct?
Say it into the mic.
I believe we are looking to do in-person meetings moving forward, as I understood it.
And what are the other 2 dates, please?
September 14th
And 28th.
and September 28th, yep. And the goal there is to, hear your input and have some time to turn it around so that hopefully we can have some kind of a joint meeting in October with the town board. And also, hopefully, at that time, I'll have something ready for the town board to consider initiating secret review to start to move into the public review process. So those are the next few dates for the group to meet. Okay? So I guess I would just want to open it up to any input you have on the document you've been handed. I say, shoot, let's hear what you have to say.
I've got a
my
few
red
notes,
pen.
Liz.
Okay.
First off, thank you. Excellent job. Incredibly thorough. On objective G, or excuse me, item G, one of the things that we're talking about are protecting quality and quantity of groundwater. One of the paragraphs for objective 2 is about the aquifer protection overlay zone. I think I would be remiss as the town's liaison to the Drinking Water Source Protection Program through DEC if I did not suggest that we incorporate DWSP 2
Yes.
into that as well. We have reached the phase now where a draft plan has been written and prepared by the engineering team that is Barton and LaJudas. That is the DEC team that's working with us on that. And they should have something ready to present to the town board, we are hoping, by the end of September or beginning of October, which would be perfect because then we could incorporate that into the consideration for the comprehensive plan so that those 2 documents can reference each other and sort of support each other moving forward.
Is that document in circulation?
The document is in draft form right
Okay.
now, so I think once the DWSP2 process has gotten to the point where they're going to be presenting it to the town board. It'll then be circulated, and this committee can take a look at it. And obviously, any comments of this committee will then be incorporated into any final revisions that go into that document. So again, we'll have two plans, the DWSP2 and the comprehensive plan, that can reference and feed off of each other for mutual strength.
What page, what section again? I missed
Page
that.
14G2?
Yes, page 14G2.
Oh, okay.
And just one other comment immediately
If you
comes.
could give me a blurb, I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to send, I'll send the group a proposed bullet point for that.
Good, good.
For objective H, or the objectives under H on page 16, just looking at the title of emphasizing scenic and historic stewardship, I'm just thinking that we could probably look at dividing that and getting rid of H as a stated goal and incorporating it into the principles of C, D, F, and G.
So you're saying this whole section? into-
As a section, it's sort of redundant. I think that we
Okay,
can incorporate
good.
its provisions into the other stated objectives, because
Good
there are
idea.
elements that, for instance, protect and enhance aesthetic quality of
Yeah, I
scenic
found
roads.
some repetition.
So if we're thinking about conserving critical lands, if we're talking about creating great places for people and creating gateways, I think that that idea of protecting and enhancing aesthetic quality would go towards those points. Just something to, I think it might help us streamline the document. That's all I got for now. Please, not all at once.
You must see this ahead of time.
You all
Yeah, about 15 minutes ago.
Oh, come. You're not that good.
I'm not good, I'm just fast. That's all.
Just one quick comment. I don't have a problem with consolidating and making it more efficient. I just would want to make sure we don't wash down something like especially the historic preservation aspects, where I know we've made a good start with the new historic law that was adopted, but I think there's a good bit more that could be done if the town decided that we really wanted to focus more on historic preservation. So as long as we don't lose track of that, and there were some additional things in the 2009 comprehensive plan that talked about things that the town could do. So anyway, I think that's a good idea, though, to try to make things more efficient and streamlined.
Good observation.
There's one note on K, page 17. Goal work cooperatively with neighboring municipalities on issues that span political boundaries. I'm not fond of the word political. I think we should go with municipal.
Excellent. Wait a minute here. Okey doke.
Definitely.
And I also, take a look at these maps, and they're pretty basic, but I don't think we need more than this. And the reason that I did them is because we have a section that talks about traffic concerns, but also sidewalks, and so these will give people a little bit of reference.
Are you passing things around, Liz, or are you online?
There should be.
We
oh,
have
No, they're
this.
passing.
Yeah, we got 'em.
They
I only
handed
was
some
able to
out.
bring a couple of sets tonight. We have two over here. And that one, actually, you can take mine. I'm not really using it. Pass that down.
Take one past the bench.
Oh, you don't have a clean version of the plan?
This is,
Yes, on my tablet.
Oh, because there were some hard copies if you want one. I
Oh,
don't
no,
know.
that's fine. You'll
Okay.
read the trio bits.
I don't know where they went. Okay, they were extras.
So I have a couple of comments. On page 18, and I think in another section where we talk about looking out for senior citizens, the police department already does have a program that they check in.
Are you okay?
Yeah, it's called Are You Okay? Perhaps we should coordinate with the police chief on this one, to see what he can add.
Okay.
He can explain his program, how it works.
Do you, so should I reach out to the police chief, find out, or is there,
Liz, I'll send an email
Yeah,
tomorrow and copy
okay.
the both of you on that,
Okay.
so that you can interface with
that
him
sounds good.
directly.
And were you, hang on a second
Can you
here.
just copy us all on that?
Yeah,
Okay, sure.
copy everybody.
I mean, it's a good thing, I think, to show we care about our seniors. This is a community that cares about our seniors. And like I said, the chief, has already developed a program on this. So
Good.
we should
Highlight it.
work with him on,
Yeah.
how we can put that in.
And I wasn't sure where you said you wanted to, but I'll figure it out.
It's on page 4 right now, but I think it was another section.
Okay.
On page 4, it says September 29, 2021 comments.
Gotcha. Okay.
Then on the next page, there's a strikeout of, the maps with the parks and trails, things like that. Is there a reason why we struck that? I just think that's kind of a nice thing to think about doing at some point.
I mean, that has to do with kind of the scope of things and
Yeah, okay.
Relying on a lot of the mapping work that was done, and, the scope was kind of based on, what was in place with the comprehensive plan update. Although,
Maybe that's something more
I mean-
like going forward, like as we develop historical tourism. that
I was going to say,
Develop something.
I guess it could be,
Or a pamphlet.
maybe be expressed as an objective to be accomplished later. Does that sound?
Or, yeah, like if we streamline this into the, historical preservation or historical tourism, as an objective, that
Mhm.
something could be developed.
Like
Just
a-
like what we said about the pictures, that we would think
Right.
about pictures
Well-
of different sites to make that part of tourism,
Sure.
And here's a highlight, you can even put something on YouTube where, people can listen to and see on a map where these places are.
If you read
This is
Jonathan,
something That
if-
can be developed.
if you read what Jonathan gave us this afternoon about the village, if you kick off of that, when you get a chance to read it, it's something that we can piggyback on and go from there with that, because it does give the history of Fishkill with an emphasis on the village. Because without the village, we wouldn't have been a town, I guess.
And I also think the reason I crossed it out was because I did put an objective somewhere, but I'll
I may have
either
missed it.
add an objective or I'll find what I did and expand on it.
Okay. Underneath that, the thing about traffic studies, I know there were traffic studies done, I'm going to say more than 5 or 6 years ago at this moment. I know there were traffic studies, especially in Merritt Park. So, again, is this something we should be working with DOT on, especially with, maybe tie this in with the Duchess Stadium issue, the issue of traffic in the 9D corridor, and, how if the DOT, I know there was some interest at some point in making that intersection all right turns, so that would, keep the traffic moving, as opposed to how it, come back up, especially when there's a game.
Good. So I guess these could become specific objectives under, in the plan, to take a look at those
Right.
studies. And actually, you could easily fold that into one of the first sections. Anyway, I don't want to interrupt.
Right,
Keep going.
right. Now I'm on page 8, on the September 30th comments from the town supervisor about the waterfront access that we really don't have. And, yesterday there was a public hearing for a bridge for that Ford Trail. I'm just wondering how much of that area can be developed, 'cause,
I believe you're talking about the rail trail?
the rail trail.
Okay, I did contact the
Ford
county
Trail.
planning
It's a Ford
board.
Trail, isn't it?
I did
It's
contact,
the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail.
Yeah.
I was talking about the rail trail between Beacon
By Beacon
and
Fishkill.
Hopewell, not the one that you're talking about.
Okay.
You're talking about the one on 9D, which is already on the planning board and is already going to go through.
Okay.
All right? I'm more concerned with the one between Beacon, the rail trail, going out to Hopewell Junction.
Right.
All right? I did contact the county planning. They did submit things that were already done. You'll get that in the mail tomorrow. I didn't have everybody's address, so I did send it to Liz, and she didn't get to open it yet. But that was already it was already planned back in 2006. All right? Our part of it got cut off when our then governor decided he wanted to go to Patterson with the rail trail from Poughkeepsie, and that little bit got cut off. But the plans are already there. I don't see why it cannot be revised, as long as we get in partnership with the city of Beacon, the village, and East Fishkill, and bring that back up. All right? And I think that was one of the biggest things we've been talking about as a group. And I guess, all this is nice, and it's going to be refining, but that's the biggest change I see that's going to happen to us in the town of Fishkill within the next 10 years. I don't know how long it's going to take to plan it and implement it and do everything and get the grants. I mean, I already see that you're going to have to put a bridge over Route 9, a pedestrian bridge like they've done in other places. We also have a couple of other places where you're going to need a bridge.
I love the one at Marist, Don't they have a student walkway over there?
Yes.
Is it under? It's
Under.
under, right?
It's under.
It's under,
that
right.
went up.
But that's the kind of.
Well,
thing.
I don't see going under there because we have a water problem.
We
have a water
I was going to say, I don't know what that would be.
Now, clarifying on that one, but over is really, really
But
good.
don't they, down on 376,
Make cookies.
I'm sorry, the walkway portion on 376, I think it is?
Yeah, they have a-
They have an over.
They have a lot of overpasses.
They have a lot of.
Yeah.
But a lot of those actually reuse the existing right of way that whoever owned that line had. They turned those bridges into now walkway.
Well,
But-
we're talking about going over Route 9. And
Yeah.
there was, there's
Yeah.
just, it used to be, if you were here a long time ago,
They took the gates out in the early, late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's just the idea that those bridges that she's referring to, those were existing elements that were already there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but 9 historically has been a grade crossing, and there's also one I want to see just west of where Washington Avenue is, near the, and will be considered Glenham, where there's an actual rail bridge. We're just given the fact that it hasn't been maintained, it needs to, something needs to be done along the lines of not necessarily an overpass, but just either taking up the rails and putting in an actual bridge.
Right.
Right.
People with bikes can use, versus having people traverse it now, walking along the railheads themselves.
well, anyway, I think that's something that we should really put into the plan and get it started. I mean, it got cut off. All
Are
right.
you talking about the old Metro North Commercial Railroad right-of-way? The one that, I mean, it's like, it almost parallels 52 in a way.
Yeah, that's what I think,
Yeah,
right?
the one that leaves, yes, it goes right, crosses Route 9, goes right from the Beacon train station.
Yep.
All right, or just south of the Beacon train station, all right? It follows the creek a lot of the ways, deviates a little bit.
I did, just take a look at page 3, 5A, not now, you don't have to do it now, but, I mean, I described it, but I went from east to west, but I would like to elaborate more with some of what you're talking about, but I'm gonna quickly paraphrase. This has to do with connect streets and neighborhoods to improve traffic circulation. Talks about using the Metro North Commercial Railroad and Metropolitan Transportation rights-of-ways, which are a series of connected linear parcels running from the eastern boundary of the town through numerous neighborhoods, the village of Fishkill, across Route 9 and under Interstate 84, through Glenham and the Chevron properties, to and through the city of Beacon, to Route 9D and the Hudson River, to make these connections. These rights-of-way, also known as Metro North Line, no longer in regular use, desired for many years as a potential central pathway for pedestrians and commuters and bicyclists. So That's my plannery's way of saying it, but the more punchy, strong, specific language we have about that, the better it is for seeking funding for any group, even if it's the town. If the language is in there, the specifics that, like the bridges you're talking about, that's all great stuff. And the town adopts it, and any agency that's thinking of helping that process will have your plan to rely on, so.
Well, I think a lot of that is written up already for you, and when you get back to the
Okay.
office tomorrow,
So
you
I'll
can
see the
read it,
email.
and if you send it out to the rest of the committee, all right? And it does come from the planning board. I know the town is way back, the town planning board, way back when, was part of it. I believe was even in the last comprehensive plan, that it was a goal.
Yeah.
And it did get cut off because the governor went a different way with it. All right? But it doesn't mean we can't bring it back, because the rest of it has been done.
Right, and I think the state actually wants to expand on those rail trails as part of their goal. I remember seeing that several years ago, so I don't know who to contact to push that, or who actually did the other lines. I think there was a private group that pushed that for many years through Putnam.
Well, again,
Right.
a lot of people were pushing it in different places. The state took it over and said, this is what we want. The county took it over. This is what they want. We got sort of pushed out of the way because they went a different way with it, but it's still there. It's a rail trail that the MTA indicated that they're willing to give up. All right, in the correspondence that I did read. So it's all set. It just needs a push from us to the town and get the rest of the partners on hand, and maybe I'll live to see it.
That'd be great.
Hopefully. Can I make a couple of points?
Well,
We're talking,
could I just, before we leave that one thing, it was a little bit confusing when I was reading on page 3 and 4, you have objectives 5A and then 6A and B, which all to me sound like it's trying to describe the same pathway that we're just talking about, the Fishkill Creek Rail Trail. So, Liz, if you could just take a look at that again, but I'm...
What page are you talking about?
I could merge it.
3 and 4.
Objective 5A.
5 and 6.
I could merge
5A
those
and
two.
6A and B.
There's only a subtle difference, but they could be merged. The first objective is connect streets and neighborhoods to improve traffic circulation and safety and encourage walking and biking. And the other objective, which, again, they could be merged, connect neighborhoods with parks, sidewalks, and bicycle lanes to encourage walking and biking.
Yeah, I think those can probably be
And then-
consolidated.
Yeah,
There's
it's the
like
same trail, right, that we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess.
So it doesn't make sense to have them separated out, in my mind.
Yeah, and then the other thing is townwide network of hiking trails and bicycle paths that link neighborhoods, parks, shopping areas, and regional trails, reduce the, so we can merge that into one big objective, and the reason that I separated them was to support various purposes of that trail. So, yeah, a lot of that could be merged.
So just a couple of points, just as a point of information, we were talking about 9D and the traffic, et cetera. I'm a liaison to Town of Wappinger, and Richard Thurston, who's the supervisor, has been working on, it's very conceptual, there's nothing set, so I don't want to get people excited, but it's like an initial step towards discussing creating what would be a zone, I believe is the terminology for it, between Wappinger and Fishkill all the way to 9D, working with DOT, and we would have more oomph as two towns working together to work with them and begin to see what we can do to handle the traffic. That's very, 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 very preliminary, but just so everyone knows, that's definitely on the radar. That's number one. Number two, you're talking about pumping up historical significance of the town. One of the things I propose for next year is that we redo our website and we make it current in every way possible. And the historical side of it certainly needs to have its own page so we're highlighting everything for the town. Also, and just to finish the thought for 9D, down at the bridge on 9D, the chief discussed last meeting that DOT has at some point, they'll be doing some painting and some signage on "Don't Block the Box" like they would do in the city to help with, as an initial, to help control some of that crazy traffic down there. And John and I are proposing also that we expand the PD and hire a traffic cop, and we dedicated to these issues around the town. So these are on the horizon being discussed. I just wanted to, as information purposes, put that out there.
Yeah, Brian, excellent point on the 9D corridor with Wappinger. As the town's liaison to the Dutchess County Transportation Council, I can say that we've always had a very strong agreement with Wappinger when it comes to matters on traffic, specifically through that 9D corridor. And it is good to see that in the past few months, the Transportation Council has identified the 90 Route 84 interchange as a priority area. Now, I don't know what that change in classification will do in terms of a timeline of there actually being any action taken to remediate the issues. But for that acknowledgement at least to be made is an encouraging start, and the language which this is incorporated here about finding and developing solutions as objective 1, objective A, I think is a really a firm statement about the situation.
It's something that at least, you know, hopefully, you know, there'll be something that, you know, but everything is takes time, everything takes study, everything takes money. So whatever we can do to create this and work on this and move it forward, I'm extremely anxious to do. I'm not in control, so I have to be patient with everybody else. I do have you know, some information that I've read where other towns have done sort of things like this. So anyway, that's just, maybe there's some hopes on the horizon, so I just want to put it out there.
I don't want to take us off on too much of a tangent. Can you elaborate just slightly as to what this zone is that you were talking about, Richard Thurston?
Well, it just, as I understand, and this is very anecdotal because I learned about this with Mr. Thurston over a lunch meeting.
Okay.
And it's basically, it gives, it creates a corridor, and because 2 towns are involved, it gives more oomph, you know, to having DOT get engaged and do something. What all that means and how far it goes and all the nuance, I don't know. And we're hoping to set a meeting actually sometime soon. I'm waiting to hear a date.
No, that's fine. I just
You
wanted
know.
to understand whether or not this was action that he was looking to take outside of the scope of what we would attempt to address with the plan update, or if it's something complementary, or if it's something completely, you know, not
Well,
related.
if it's tackling traffic on 90, it's
welcome.
complimentary. You know.
Very much so.
You know.
I think, and I'm hoping, Fred, when I look at the email that you already sent me, it's also a good idea to identify interested parties and groups in this, because then again, you know, it's the same thing when you come around to funding, so some of that's in there too.
In my letter to you,
Okay,
it identified, well, us, Beacon, the village of Fishkill.
Yep.
Because it goes through their territory, all right? And then it goes out to Hopewell Junction, which is the East Fishkill, and it also covers the county.
Yep.
And then the state.
Yep, well, and it's regional. I mean,
And
it
I'm
really
sure
is
Cedar
regional.
Hudson or whoever they are would be much in favor of it.
Yep.
With all their trails.
Yep.
It also connects a bunch of our parks, all right? Including Van Pelt, including, even though it's not ours, but Sarah Taylor, because it goes along theirs. It connects to Gearing, all right? And we also own, and also the town official owns some land in there, which they can spin off, which is sort of landlocked in between the two of them, just outside the village, just on the west side of the village, that we own some land by the 84. And that would open up some more parkland for us, and also put for the village, because the village is part of us. So people could go there and walk and do whatever.
Good.
Do we have a list of all the parks and trails and things like that that are in the town?
Do we?
Because I'm looking at goal C on page 8, and it says create great places for people, and I'm looking at,
Let's
you know,
add a list of
parks and
That's
trails
easy.
and opportunities, and I know the ones that are close to me, but I don't know
No, that's
really
easy.
any other.
Add
And then
list
if we
parks.
want to promote that, we should find out what they are.
Yep.
What they entail, you know, what they have at them.
I would hope Parks has that.
But we as a town
Yeah.
want to promote that
Showcase
to
it.
I get it.
to our citizens,
Yeah.
so that they can use it. You know, Gearing's right by us, which is awesome, but I know that people don't live right there, you know?
I know.
And like you're talking about all the different parks that are connected, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, there probably is, but I don't know where they are.
It's
and what
probably
they
on
are.
there.
Walk the rail trail.
I never walked the rail trail. And so we want to encourage the people to use these things and know that they're there. So how do we promote that?
Okay.
First, having a list of them. You know, you talked about historic sites. Well, parks could be on there too,
Oh,
even if it's just a map and what they entail.
Absolutely.
You know, where to park, because that's a big one too sometimes, is where
That's a
do you
very
get
big one.
access it?
That's a very, very important point.
You know, and it kind of called to my attention because it's a small section right there. And I was like, how do we make this bigger? Not necessarily on purpose, but thinking about that. I know some of the towns that I have lived in the past, they actually have town days or county days where they'll have it at one of the town parks, where they just have a big celebration for that town. And what they tend to do is they bring in all the businesses to have tents there and things like that, and they'll have bouncy houses, and generally it's a town-sponsored commercial, but for all the people, you know, and you know, sometimes the state will be there to promote conservation or fishing, and it's this big
A lot of
thing.
people mention festivals and fairs.
Festivals and fairs, because it brings people closer. I mean, it's something that the village does all the time.
It used to be called Fishkill Day when I grew up.
So obviously, there was something
Fred,
like
remember?
that. And not for nothing, because it brings community together, and it also promotes businesses within that community, which is, I think, terrific, especially our small businesses, you know, that don't have maybe a big footprint like a storefront. Daycares, I know, were fantastic at that. Summer camps would always be represented, and they would do things like face paint or whatever, and you know, something to consider and think about, and I know it really brings people together.
Are there commercial or institutional places, like, I know this sounds funny, but with big parking areas where you could set up?
Well, we have some big parks. Well, we have one big park.
And
We do have Gearing. Mount Gearing Park.
Right.
Which
The
is,
one you're talking about was at the firehouse. Is that where?
Well, I know the
it's-
village actually just shuts down the
Gearing's-
street, but Gearing's a nice centralized
Well,
location.
that's
I
where
don't
they
know
had,
other parks.
that's where they held the Fishkill Day, was
That's where they
actually at
used to have
Gordon
it.
Park, yes.
I love
And
that. I wanna-
if I may, and Kevin, you really touched on a lot of points, I agree with you. Parks, if you either develop more or go with what we have right now, my largest concern about the parks is their maintenance, or for that matter, the lack thereof.
Oh, I'm not saying adding more parks. I'm saying just are our parks.
I like
Whether there is or not more green space
Yeah.
added, the fact of the matter remains is that one of the most key elements to the equation is maintaining them at a higher standard. You can get people to go to these parks, and I'm not going to, you know, if I go to the village park down to Sarah, I don't care where you go, the maintenance of it is underwhelming, is the only way to describe it. There's a park directly behind me where I live, and I'm not a big complainer. I usually like just to go over and have a conversation, but sometimes I even wonder if I should make that conversation or not, because I don't even know who's there anymore. These people are from out of town, and I love parks. I want people to enjoy them, but if they're going to abuse, which they have in the past, and they're continually doing so, that maintenance, whether it's from our local police department or garbage or any of that nature is very important if we're going to utilize these things as our fiscal resources and you know, enjoying these parks as they should.
Well, I see that as a different issue, though. I mean, we have the parks, if they're not being maintained or taken care of, I would see as a different issue. Not promoting them is not an excuse. Maybe closing some or using them for something else might be, if that's one of the issues. I was just saying, what are our parks, what's available to the citizens?
I would like to open up another subject, if you don't mind.
Before we move on.
Which is regarding parks. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to answer a point that Kevin brought up. There is a page on the town website which identifies the parks owned and run by the town. It is fishkill-ny.gov/parks. Now, the page is somewhat rudimentary, as is everything else on our website, but as part of the redevelopment of the website, which the town board is promoting for next year and planning for, I can assure you that when the network administrator and I are working on developing specific pages, we can make sure that including more robust and user-friendly information about our town parks can be one of the priorities for that section of the redevelopment.
And I would encourage everyone to email us on what you'd like to see on this webpage in each section, so we make sure that we're including that. So not only for historical, but parks. John.
So before we move away,
See John Foreman's face.
Okay, let me,
before we move away from this subject still, page 9, Liz had said we should provide a map of parks, trails, sidewalks, bike lanes, et cetera, which also had to do with this proposed recreation zoning district that was in the 2009 plan. But leaving that aside for now, I think a map with a kind of a basic inventory of the parks and trails that exist now is exactly what one of the purposes of this comprehensive plan could be. So that's kind
okay,
of,
That's why I deleted it from the other area, because it's already in here.
and put it here.
Page 9.
One of the things I'd like to bring out is something else towards recreation, all right? And I'm very much involved in recreation for my own use. And one of them is, we have a great resource that we're not using at all, which is called the Fishkill Creek. All right? Everybody complains that we don't have water, or we may not have real access to the Hudson River, but we have major access to the Fishkill Creek. All right? And I'd like to see us put something in the plan to help us revitalize the Fishkill Creek so people can use it. You can take an RV, that's me, RV. You can take a raft or a canoe or a tubing, leaving from leaving from Doug Phillips Park, all right, and take it all the way down to Sally Taylor Park and go all the way down to
Texaco.
All right?
Dennings Point?
Well, no, I don't.
Oh, no, it's a Texaco. Texaco.
You go down to Van Pelt Park, all right? And that's something we should put in and
Now,
look for.
is the creek clean?
Oh, I drink the water every day.
That would explain a lot.
On the rocks.
Where,
But again, it's there, could be used, it has to be cleaned up, all right? We have to deal with
Who
DEC.
governs the creek? What?
I'm assuming that
DEC.
Right, so you're saying
hang on.
We should work with
we
DEC,
should do what?
work with DEC to help clean up the
Okay.
park and do something. I know when I was president of Rotary, I had Rotary go down and clean up all the stuff out of the creek.
That's
Right,
right.
you generally have volunteer days
Volunteer.
to go down
Right.
in the spring.
Where would we have access? Because that's another thing I don't know, is where's
You
your
can-
access?
You have direct
Access to the
access
parks.
with a boat ramp
Yeah.
already that's there at Doug Phillips.
Oh, okay.
You have access at Van Pelt.
Correct.
You have access village at Sally Taylor, all right?
Oh,
And
that's
somebody
true.
can go straight down that,
Yeah.
get off where they want, get on where they want, and
I'm blaming
it's great. I mean, people fishing.
Just to follow up on that, Liz, when we start to talk about looking at these other, areas that, could be, reutilized, better utilized, when you're putting together these maps, not like I'm looking to give you homework or anything.
No,
But
I'm here to get homework.
If we could see in a visual form on the map, not too unlike the stuff that you guys took from, it's not Acris up here, parcel access. If we could see which properties are owned by either, the county, the village, the town, as the case may be, because Rob made an excellent point. There's a landlocked parcel that we could potentially open up as part of this, proposed rail trail. Knowing that there's adjacent property that's disused, that's municipally owned, it'd be a better value proposition to explain to people like, well, now we can open up this other space. Maintenance issues notwithstanding, which I do recognize, that would allow us to see opportunities that may not otherwise be realized because we don't understand who's controlling that land in the first place.
So are you talking about town-owned land that's
Yes.
on the Metro North Railroad?
No, not necessarily just adjacent. Within the town itself, we have a finite number of parcels.
Okay.
Some of those parcels are owned by either the village or the town. Now, obviously, if there's a pumping station on it, the opportunity for reuse or multiple uses is limited.
Right.
However, if it's just physically a landlocked parcel that otherwise has no recreational or commercial value in its current state, those properties should be identified for us, not necessarily just within the purview of the update committee, but for the public to understand when we talk about redeveloping things, making better use of parcels that we're already not collecting tax money on because they are owned by the government.
So town-owned parcels, to make better use of them, meaning opening up to public access or
having the discussion as to whether or not it should be opened up for public access as part of a larger project that may be occurring.
Okay. I think, I'm sure in the tax rolls, there's a bunch of exempt parcels, but figuring out, you can also kind of click around on Dutchess Parcel Access and see who owns things. But I think you're talking about large landlocked parcels, so that's a kind of a random search. I would have to start with.
Oh, I wasn't speaking specifically to landlocked. I used his landlocked parcel as an example.
Okay.
Of a parcel that's relatively not used or completely not used.
But municipally owned, that's
municipally
your
owned.
focus?
That's
Okay.
the focus, yes.
So if it's not a sewer plant or a water plant or the highway garage or
Yes.
whatever. Some communities have a park at the highway garage. That's possible.
Which is what I did.
Now, does the town have a lot of land that is not being used? It has some, but I don't think it has a lot.
Well, I'm not purporting.
No, I'm just
No, I
wondering.
did
You
stumble
did bring it up,
across
so
something.
I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, most of it that's probably owned is most likely used.
Not aware of any.
There is a total of 51 properties owned by the town of Fishkill.
And how many of them are not?
Well, you're just going to click through and look.
You can find it in the tax roll, it's all the exempt.
It's not hard, it honestly.
Aren't they all exempt?
For the town of Fishkill, I don't know if they're all exempt, but the fact is that, a lot of them are, of course, use highway department, certain things,
Right.
easements to get stuff through. But I'm sure, based upon what this gentleman is saying, that there's probably some potential for expanding on that.
But what you're thinking is if they're underutilized, if they could be used for something else and they're already town-owned.
But
So,
used for what?
so let's say, I'll give you an
Green
example.
space.
Okay.
CO2 mitigation.
I
AKA
like
trees.
that.
Well, here's an example. There's a hunk of land in the village of New Paltz that's right next to the sewer plant, right on the Wallkill River, because that's what happens after the stuff's
Yeah.
treated, that water goes somewhere. And there's a huge field that's gardens for nutrition. And then there's also some recreation trails that kind of wind along the river and back over toward Huguenot Street. So, yeah, I think that's great. If there's anything anybody's aware of course, shoot an email over to me. Because short of that, what I'm going to do is start with the tax roll, try to find out what's town-owned, because you can't really, Dutchess Parcel Access isn't the place to look for that. I don't want to just click around.
Oh, yeah, you'd be all-
But starting with a list
Yeah.
is helpful.
I'll call Mr. Walker.
I can call you, Mr. Walker, or I could email you.
You can, either one,
Okay, fine.
either one.
And I think, the other thing I heard I do like the idea of connecting people to water, because if people have access to water, whether it means they can just go sit someplace on a bench and look at water, whether they can pop a canoe in the water, whether they can go fishing, or whether, like my husband when he was a kid, walk across the ice, really dangerous.
Well, I'll tell you, you can walk across the creek now, where I am.
Okay.
But I saw a stand-up board the other day, or I should say last week for the first time. I haven't seen one of those yet. But I agree, I've seen more traffic on the creek over this last 2 to 3 years than I have for many years to come.
People want to get near water, and if there's a way, I think the thing about parks and public spaces, well, no traffic study, the more people you have.
Some of that train rail that we were talking about runs right along.
That's
a nice stretch of it.
That's
And I
right.
think that was kind of what you were probably talking about,
Right.
related with property, maybe that is municipal, that we could then be used. But again, it's funny how it always comes back to, if we can get that sucker up and going, it can promote a lot more open space.
Well, I mean,
and
for me at this point, it's just safety. People are using it now.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there's a small
yeah.
cadre of people who will walk
Oh, yeah.
from the Doug Phillips area over to Route 9. Or
Right.
there are people who will walk from Route 9, like leaving Walmart along the tracks
Right.
and wind up in Glenham.
Right.
And so, rather than have them do it at their own risk, which mind you is trespassing because Metro North still is technically responsible for it, make it safe so people don't trip over rails, and potentially you could ride a bike on it, at which point it probably could take a car or 2 or 50 off the road. I mean, I was late today simply because I sat in traffic between 9 and 84, which, I don't want to, we keep saying traffic, but it's a big problem. Now, obviously, we can't take more land and we can't build mammoth highway interchanges and do, we're kind of physically constrained with a lot of the solutions that we can come up with. So unfortunately, not unfortunately, but fortunately, we do have to look to try and take cars off the road rather than make room for more cars.
And the more, I mean, and this is, I'm not making an explanation, Jonathan, but one of the reasons to harp on, no.
He's staying quiet
Thank
today.
you.
I don't know.
No, he had a great idea about consolidating. When we do consolidate the whole thing about the Metro North right-of-ways, here's the thing, having been a grant writer, I want there still to be a message that it has the potential for multiple uses, so bike, pedestrian, getting people off the roads, maybe some consideration of zoning right on there for walk-up small businesses and cafes. And so the idea is that when you're doing grant writing to try to get funding for a big, huge project like that, you want to convince the people that have the money available that so much is going to come from, developing a trail along there, not just transportation, but people having access to water, people having access to parks, people with new business. So that, I sort of built in the redundancy, but I have to admit, it wasn't done well. I was in a hurry. But I would like to, kind of consolidate some of that, but still focus on the multi-use aspect of that.
Yeah, but thus, I think highlighting the trail and then putting its multi-functions under the trail as the trail being the project that everybody's going to see is a great thing.
Yep.
And then put the reasons why under it as opposed to the other way.
Yep, good.
If you want to think big, you can also put a trolley from Hopewell all the way to Beacon.
Are you driving?
Does it go clang, clang, clang?
Why not?
We had a suggestion that it's a rickshaw and that he can pull it. Yeah.
A Fred Shaw, if you
The Fred Shaw, yes, very good. We'll call it the Fred Shaw.
That's not such a bad idea. Come on, guys. It's very
Put it back
quaint.
to you.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you got anything else on that?
On the trail, no, but I got about
what you were
100
just
other
reading
things. Is that, are you giving me permission to go through some things now?
Yes.
All right. Let's see.
Give us a page number.
Let's change the goal topic to, let's start on page 9.
Okay.
Goal, ensure economic and social diversity. And I sort of thought about that, and the economic part of it struck me as being important. In addition, it talks mainly about housing types and green building techniques, but while we're at it, why don't we talk a little bit about the economic aspects of the town and the need for providing things like small local businesses in the town so that the town's economy can thrive and provide opportunities for employment. There really wasn't anywhere else in the plan that talked very much about that, and I think this probably is the place to do it. And I think the survey, while people did seem to mention that they were opposed to more big box types of development and, like name brand, I won't mention names, but, the commercialized national businesses, thank you. They thought emphasizing local business opportunities was something, a good idea. So that was, I would add some wording like that, and I could send you some wording in the goal itself. Then you mentioned Town of Fishkill has a housing department. Well, I don't think we do anymore.
That's old language.
Yeah, so.
That's old language that just got moved.
Right, so
They
in
don't.
addition to moving it, we should revise it and update it. Maybe we need some kind of a housing department to implement the affordable housing provisions that we have, but we also talked about, well, maybe we need to look at those provisions and figure out if they're working, and should we update them or revise the actual provisions in the zoning code. So we probably want to talk about that a little bit here. And then, right under that, Fred had clued us into the fact that the Dutchess County just completed a housing needs assessment dated 2022. We should probably try to clip a little bit from that. They provided some pretty good executive summaries of it. And we should indicate how that might be able to apply to the town of Fishkill as, helping out with what turns out to be a regional problem. So that's kind of that one.
Just one thing that I've noticed in a number of communities, I don't know if you want to give input on later, is everybody that's talking about affordable housing or workforce housing, there seems to be, or moderate income housing, an issue with calling it whatever they want to call it because people are so fearful, which is really unfortunate. Because there is a broad spectrum of folks that need housing.
Yeah.
So any ideas anybody has about that, and maybe what we do is acknowledge all of those possible titles. They're all important.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a really good point.
The other question that comes to my mind is where? I mean, we're rather built up. I mean, and I know the last time that we had our meeting, we did discuss, what to maybe do with the prison that's shut down, and that's as a possibility, because I can't really think of too many other places.
Actually, the prison will not be a good possibility based on the land that it's on. It's actually swampland, and part of the reason why the state actually closed it is because of dilapidating condition. You can't build a solid foundation on those grounds. Like even now, the state has a committee for prisons to find out what they're going to do with all the prisons they're closing. And as for downstate correctional facility, the state actually leased it out to a movie corporation to film movies there, which they're currently doing right now. But to have anything else apart from, say, open space, green areas, there, it's not going to really be sustainable unless we come and like dump it up and build it up, because the land there is not very sturdy.
So pretty much the only thing you could do there is tear it down.
Well, that'd be expensive too. I would.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
It limits what can be done with that large section of property.
Is it the quality of the terrain and the soil? Is it just not good building land?
It's just not good building land, but given that it's state-owned, has the town of Fishkill get together with the state to work something out with them?
I don't think they have yet. I know the state has started to put together a team from the newspaper, what to do with all of
Right.
all the decommissioned prisons. And we had actually talked at the last meeting about shooting ideas of a possibility of doing a mixture of residential and business, but if it's not buildable, or those buildings are just gonna fall down.
The state was here yesterday on a tour, Empire State Development, doing a whole tour.
Yes, they were.
And the film wrapped. I was at the prison, so they're out of there. But so there's a interest in all prisons, but there's a committee that reviews all prisons, and they were here looking at that, and their interest seems to be along economic lines, having it somehow create jobs. So I mean, there's nothing firm. It's just anecdotal.
Yeah, very
The
very
thing
early
is-
And
days.
that's what we had discussed, is doing a mixed use of business and.
The town will literally have to get in on the state and be on them about it. For example, Beacon Correctional Facility closed back in, 2011?
Yes.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
It's still sitting there rotting, doing nothing. They're-
But this would be first steps, deciding on what we would like, and then to try and push. And if you are saying that even the ideas that we came up with are not doable because what is already currently there is just gonna fall down.
The first step will be getting control of it from the state. Because once it's in state and it's gonna be.
Yeah, but I think he's saying, why bother if we can't build it?
Right, if we can't do anything with it, then it's just an albatross around our neck, and it's better just left to the state. You know what I'm saying? Because if we take it over, then it's our tax burden versus their
Yes.
tax burden.
Yes.
And if you can't do anything.
Tax burden.
In a different way. You personal tax burden, you know what I'm saying? It's a double, because you're paying either way.
It's diluted, yeah.
And so I know, I had definitely brought up, and we had thought about, like I said, doing something with it that was the issue, which was we wanted economic development and we wanted housing, and I know I couldn't really think of other places to put those kind of things except for something large like that was already built, right? Which would save.
So let's not preclude the possibilities of that happening just
Okay.
because we hear
Yeah.
that it might not be able to accommodate things. It has to be studied,
Right.
obviously.
Absolutely.
But the plan is definitely a place to bring up the idea that there are a number of parcels in the town, limited, that's one of them. Fortunately, the Veterans Hospital no longer is going to be one of those. It seems that's going to continue as a hospital, which is a good thing.
What about the Chevron land?
There's that, I was going to mention that, and so what I thought about doing, and I actually started doing it, is what I call a large parcel analysis. It's basically looking at the parcel access maps. I sort of set myself a threshold of like 25 acres minimum size, and came up with about, probably almost 50 parcels of that size, not town-owned necessarily, all the parcels in the town. There aren't a lot, so 50 is a manageable thing to look at. So I created a sort of a worksheet, went through the tax parcels, put down all kinds of information about existing land use, tax information, some degree of things like wetlands and steep slopes that are kind of on the parcel database, existing zoning, et cetera, et cetera. And so my next step is going to be sort of doing a theoretical development potential analysis on all those 50 or so parcels, and then sending it to Liz and see what she can do with it. But sending it to everybody, actually. But
You may want to consider putting not only just the wetlands, but like dirty sites as well.
yeah, things like the former Texaco research facility definitely has.
I wonder if it would help, if you want me to grab like an EAF mapper blank on the sites, sometimes it will point out a bunch of stuff all at once.
Yeah.
I
so
think
maybe-
some of the other things maybe to consider is also traffic areas where you would increase traffic, putting a site there. Also, access for people to then walk or bike from those sites, if we are talking about housing.
So,
Or bus,
yeah.
being close to bus lines,
So
or
that's like
some other
sort of-
way of.
That's sort of like taking this parcel analysis to the next step.
Right.
Which is
Right,
important.
right.
It's important, but.
It's important,
But it's
especially
not
because
part of-
it's, you know.
But what I thought I
it's
would
one
do
of the-
is-
some of the other things we're covering in this.
What I thought I would
plan.
start off doing, because I've done it before, is just start with the basic physical inventory, and then have the group look at it and take off from there with it.
In your search, are you also looking at properties that are abandoned and still have buildings on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for instance, the Duchess Mall property that we've all been talking about, the Chevron property, yes, things like that. So they're not necessarily vacant, but I call them vacant or underutilized properties.
Right, because that came up in the questionnaire, that people want to see more things developed that were
Right.
once developed.
Right, that's a good
And-
point. The survey really pointed to
Right.
that, rather than necessarily developing new sites that might have, forested properties or
Right.
other environmental features that we want to protect, try to reuse sites that have already been built on.
But isn't the Industrial Mall already something going on there?
Yes. Yeah, there's before the planning board, there's a proposal for a 350,000 square foot warehouse facility at the old Duchess Mall property. So, yeah, we'll be dealing with that.
Could be worse.
And,
I'm just tired.
and that, so that
That was
also.
unrelated to that announcement.
That deals with the gateway aspects of the town as well, which, if we had time tonight, which it looks like we're going to start running out of soon, but
We have 40 minutes.
the gateways are something that I was thinking about a lot too, and I think we can and should expand on that a little bit. Actually, let me go quickly to that.
Yes.
Let's see, what page is the gateway thing on?
John, when you're done with that, can we revisit one aspect of housing?
Yeah, please. Page 8. Goal D, create gateways. So first of all, I would say create and enhance gateways,
There you go.
because the gateways are there, but some of them, and for instance, wording like that, I think would help in the sense of reviewing a proposal like a warehouse facility on Route 9 at the old Duchess Mall
So
property.
listing them, I guess.
So, like, under the objective 1, preserve and enhance the existing rural, I'd also add community and scenic character of Route 9D and Route 9 at the entrances of the town.
Sorry, say again, preserve, I was writing something else.
Well,
Preserve the
I'll send you,
Okay.
all this wording,
Good,
so don't
good, good.
worry too much about
Okay.
exact words, but preserve and enhance the existing rural, community, and scenic character of those roads. It turns out there are other areas that probably could be considered important gateways too, that I'll outline in a second. But then I added a sentence under that objective 1, something to the effect of pay special attention to applying the design guidelines that have been incorporating in town code in those gateway areas.
Yeah,
And then more specific listings of what those gateway areas are, because
yes.
the 2009 plan really just mentioned 9D and Route 9. I tried to be a little more specific.
Sure.
For instance,
I could come up with a draft list and then you can,
also a map of gateway areas would be easy, just
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
if you look at that Village of Fishkill comp plan
Got
that I
it.
sent around, they have these little arrow-like thingies on a map that are just labeled as gateways, and it's very, very simple.
good.
But, for instance, more specifically about Route 9, south of I-84, approaching the former Duchess Mall area, so we could be that specific. Route 9D at the I-84 interchange, transition between Beacon and the town of Fishkill. Route 9D, entering town of Fishkill from the town of Phillipstown, going through that beautiful Hudson Highlands area. Route 9D, southbound entering the town of Fishkill from the town of Wappinger, which sort of is what we were talking about before. Route 52, actually, westbound entering the town of Fishkill from East Fishkill, approaching the new Daniel Ninham statue memorial site, which actually, that whole triangle of 82 merging with 52, that's really a gateway.
Sure.
So I just thought expanding on that concept of the gateway is important, and it really is an important concept to put in the plan. So maybe I should rest for a while.
No, keep going.
Talk about,
Unless
well, I think Greg wanted to say more about housing.
Yeah, just returning on the E objective on page 9. I understand the concern with language in terms of affordable housing, workforce housing, et cetera. I think whatever language we want to use to identify it is fine, but speaking candidly as the youngest person sitting on this committee, home ownership is something that my generation looks at as a luxury. That's not something which is a given. You know, I have a very respectable public salary. I'm sure I could make more in the private sector doing the same work, but I chose public service because of the value that it contributes to society. But even friends who have successful, you know, private sector jobs are not able to go into the housing market, not here and not now.
Not anywhere.
Really, not anywhere. Now, we understand that this committee cannot solve the problems on our housing market because we cannot fix the economy, sitting here, the 15 of us. But I think that we absolutely need to recognize that whatever language we're using to describe the issues facing people purchasing housing, housing is not affordable. So referring to things as affordable housing units, what that often is I don't want to say it's a stand-in, but it's often a placeholder to describe high-density development.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that euphemism, if you will, but Fishkill is in a situation where we can't really accommodate high-density development as a solution to housing affordability, because the infrastructure around here, whether that we're talking about water and sewer connections, whether we're talking about our local school districts, whether we're talking about the complete general lack of public transportation in the area outside of Metro North Railroad, or we're talking about the roadways in our area, are just not meant to accommodate, they weren't meant to accommodate the level of traffic that they were receiving 20 years ago. They're certainly not meant for more now. So I think we need a longer view approach when we are identifying and targeting initiatives or policies which will enable first-time home buyers, which will enable people perhaps who grew up in the town of Fishkill or in the Hudson Valley in general and who wish to stay here to be able to do so, because there is a reason why young people who grew up in our area are not staying here, and it's because we can't afford to live here anymore.
Okay, but I'd like to split it in two different parts, being in real estate. One is affordable, being able to pay for the house after you purchase it is one thing, and a lot of people can do that. On your salary, you can do that. What you don't have is the down payment to get into that first house, and that's the big criteria.
Fred,
Lacking in a lot of
a good point, but local banks, I think, would participate in that. I believe I've saw programs, and I think Rhinebeck Bank, now Bank, used to be Savings Bank, but they're local. I know they had programs geared specifically. It was in a different county, but why can't they have that here? Local banks.
So maybe something that we can try to incorporate into the plan would be some sort of language to encourage and stimulate fostering relationship between local housing lenders
100%.
and interested, you know, homeowners or first-time homeowners, however we want to focus on that without being ageist at all, but doing something that would foster, first off, sound and best practices from the financial side, but that make homeownership a feasible objective for, especially for younger people who do not have, as you say, the established credit or the established financial situation. Because my generation in particular, we're coming out of college with $50,000 to $70,000 of debt. And if we're lucky, we get a job that pays us more than minimum wage, because you need 5 to 10 years experience for an entry-level job now.
I don't know any young families who live in Fishkill that own a home, who recently moved here.
Right. Everyone I know in my generation, and by my generation, I'm referring from the age of 25 to 35, who owns a home in Fishkill, inherited it from a family who either bought a house in Florida and retired, or, you know, in some cases, parents may have passed away and left the house to the kids. But I don't know anyone in the town of Fishkill within 5 years of my age who in the last 5 years has just said, there's a house, I'm going to own it now.
And I'm going to say something that's a little deeper. So we're of a certain age where we would have in the past moved on to a larger house, but because of the financial breakdown in '08, that was not, and all we did was expand instead. And so that leaves a starter home that we're in available. So it's not just, I think, a finance, but it's an availability.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and I kind of glean that that's a big thing, because I know everybody in my age group, it's the exact same thing. They could never move on to a McMansion or something like that. It's just not feasible. It's not affordable.
Right.
And so there's the starter homes are not being vacated. And if they are, they're only going to leave because they can get a lot of money for it.
That's right.
That's the only way we would leave. You know?
And particularly in the last few years, where we've seen an influx of new home buyers coming out of Westchester, coming out of New York City, houses which are going on the market, not only are they going very quickly, but they're often going to people who were not originally local. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I'm all for the free market, but when you're dealing with demand exceeding supply, obviously the cost is going to go up, which prices out younger homeowners. And what we need to consider from a comprehensive plan update is how to encourage a stabilization of our housing market without necessarily increasing supply of housing units in a way that isn't sustainable in terms of the infrastructure, because that seems to be a dichotomy, and neither side of that is particularly, there's not much cause for optimism on either side, because if we're looking at fixing it on the supply side, well, then we're going to be creating more traffic, we're going to be burdening our public utilities, we're going to be putting environmental resources at risk. If we don't increase the supply side, we're still going to be a high demand area because of the benefits of living in the Hudson Valley and living in Fishkill specifically. So how do we stabilize housing costs so that way we're not pricing out an entire generation of potential home buyers? Because looking at Fishkill as a place that I might like to live 40 or 50 years from now, what happens in 40 or 50 years from now if the only people who can afford to move here are 45 and older? Who's going to be here in 40 or 50 years?
That's a lot to condense down for the comprehensive plan.
Specifically into one or two sentences, not just the whole plan, just objective one.
I challenge you to do that.
So you want me to fix the economy, is that it, right?
No, we need to find him a house.
I'll pitch in if it gets you.
Preferably 3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
You and me both.
Let's move on.
That's all you had to ask for, is just, I need a house.
No, if it was just for me, I would, but it's so much larger reaching
One of
than
the
that.
few ways to bring down housing costs is to have an infrastructure that has water and sewer that they can hook into, all right? That's one way to do it, because infrastructure does bring down the cost. All right?
Yeah, but do we have the places to even build? And do we have the schools that can take even
Yeah, I
more?
don't think anybody's gonna.
There's still stuff to build.
Okay,
And
yeah.
besides,
I
even if
saw
we were
that.
capped out with land, we'd only assemblage.
Yeah, you'd assemble it
Start-
differently, but I'm just,
It all starts from the top as we're doing right now.
yeah.
That's one of the
But
reasons.
is that feasible in this area with like the traffic issue, with the school issue?
The school, you're saying the school issue. The schools are not an issue. Our schools are not bursting out with people.
No, I think they're.
Incorrect.
Which ones?
We
bursting out?
haven't got to that section in the
Wappingers is
comprehensive plan?
Yeah, well, getting back to the reusing,
Are the schools growing their population?
I don't know.
No,
I just know that
that's
my
right.
kids
We
went to
haven't gotten
school, they
there
were
yet,
in
but-
trailers in the back, so.
Right.
This is
Yeah,
my
but
personal experience.
That was what happened
But the
in
population in the schools have come down.
No,
Okay.
everywhere.
That's a fact.
Everywhere.
so,
That's a fact.
Has it come down?
I don't care what you tell me.
Closing
Our
elementary
population
schools
in
down.
Fishkill has come down.
Yes, it
That's a fact.
So one of the beauties of reusing formerly developed properties is that in many cases, well, in some cases, the infrastructure is there.
Right.
So I think it would be inaccurate to characterize the town as not having any sites left for, for mixed use or higher density development. If the infrastructure is there, again, traffic is an issue that depends on where it is, so that has to be looked at. Obviously, that's not
But don't
something that
we
the
have in
plan
the plans,
Hold on,
sorry.
please. That's not something that the comprehensive plan can necessarily prejudge, but to certainly raise as issues as we are raising. But the schools, again, I don't think we can prejudge the schools, let them speak for themselves. One of the things that we do get to later in the plan is coordinate with the school districts, and we probably need to do a better job of doing that, but nonetheless, for the planning board normally does try to communicate with the school districts on larger scale proposals, but we haven't had too many large residential proposals lately that are new approvals. Some of them are amendments of previous approvals, but and others are commercial developments which really don't have many school-age kids. But so anyway, the point is we do need to start talking more specifically about some of the large sites that we do have available, such as the Glenham Mills property, otherwise known as Chevron. That's kind of one of those parts of the town that is sensitive, and it's, certainly whatever happens there could impact the adjacent neighborhoods. But on the other hand, it's one of the few sites that the town has with development potential, assuming that the remediation can be put in place to make parts of that site available. But it's something we need to talk about and think about and look at, because there just aren't that many sites available in the town, so we do need to maximize opportunities.
So my question is, how do you get Chevron to pay for that remediation? Because I've been in direct talks with Chevron for the last 3 years on that property specifically. And they are at their heels dug in the dirt, that they are not, and I'm gonna say it again, not cleaning it up. You're the developer, you clean it up. I don't care. How do you get past that? I mean, listen, I'm for it, I'm with you.
Have you heard
It's my backyard.
have you heard the dollar amount on cleaning up that site?
As far as what?
The cost.
The cost of cleaning up the
Well,
site, have you heard?
it's still going through the Department of Environmental Conservation
I mean,
process.
I've heard anecdotally a lot of different numbers, so, I mean, I wish they would, so we could do something with it.
You'll never
but
know the cost.
They just don't, they won't do it.
After it's been done.
That's correct. They won't do it.
Brian, it decades and decades, many feet down, people, they go in there and it takes them a long time. I can't share the file, but they gave me the file. I have everything on that property. And I'm just overwhelmed with what is there. That's why I'm saying, John, I might as well get it out right now. I don't want you go through a lot of work. I'm not saying don't give up, but that's a tall order there, Val. I really have to, listen, I'm in. I'll participate now, Val.
So one thing I think committee members should look at, there's a, Chevron had a community advisory committee set up a few years ago, and they did what they called the Glenham Mills charrette report in April of 2018. And it totally evaluated the site other than the remediation aspects of it, because that's something nobody knows yet what the full extent of that is. We know there's a lot that's going to have to be done, but we don't know exactly what or how much it's going to cost. But at any rate, the committee basically analyzed the properties in that Glenham Mills site with all kinds of information about the site characteristics and the potential possible uses, all kinds of alternatives that could be there. And it's pretty interesting. And so whether any of them actually could happen or not, I don't know. But if you want to find out some really good information about that site and area, I'd certainly recommend taking a look at that report, and we should probably excerpt some of that stuff and put it into our plan in terms of the informational aspects of it, not, you know, not philosophical or necessarily prejudging what can and should go on the site, but there's a lot of factual information in that report that really, I think, would be helpful in people realizing what could or couldn't be done on the site, assuming it can be cleaned up.
Is it a public document?
Yeah, it's on their website.
Okay. On
So-
Chevron's website, or?
It's a separate, I'll send the link
If I look
around.
up Chevron
it's-
Charette
Yeah.
2018, that might pop up.
Yeah, it's called the Glenham Mills Charette Report 2018. Yeah, if you just Google that, you'll probably go right to it.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
Yeah, they put out a report every month.
Doesn't really say much because
No, it doesn't.
they don't have much updates, but.
Not at all.
And they are actively trying to market the site, like you say. They would prefer having somebody just come along and buy it and then do all the stuff on it. I'm sure.
Let's be clear about the marketing here. You dial the phone number, it goes to a guy in Monroe who works for the company 5 years ago. That's how I know. And the sign is still up.
It is. Silence, I guess I really.
No, keep going, but I just have to throw in that one of the projects reviewed for the town of Poughkeepsie in the last couple of years had to do with the old Dutton lumber yard. Yeah, it's going to be condos. They went through the whole brownfield remediation program. They sought funding. It got cleaned up enough, and there's a recommendation for how to develop the site and how to treat the site to be able to do the development, and they've been moving forward with approvals. They may be even done, and
They are.
yeah, so there you go. So it is daunting, but it's still a site that's possible.
Close here.
Okay, so I have to say that we are at 20 minutes of 9. John and I had a discussion about the possibility of keeping this to an hour and a half. And of course, I need the access to this committee to hear all of your ideas. So if you all want to continue, we can do that, or we can wrap up. And so does anybody have any strong feelings one way or another?
Well, I think we've given you plenty of revisions to make over the next month. I'd say
I think
give us some bullet points.
Jonathan had more, but we can figure that out another way.
What I was going to suggest that I do, because I still have a lot more, is that I'm going to take, if you do send us a Word document.
I will send a Word document to everybody.
I will mark it up.
That's excellent. Can I throw out one more affordable housing concept?
Please.
Unfortunately,
Please.
what I've noticed in a number of communities is a limit on the size of a dwelling unit, which I think is unfortunate. In other words,
As a minimum or as a maximum?
as a minimum.
Okay.
In other words, you can't build something smaller than 700 square feet. It's not necessarily a tiny house, it could be an apartment, so then the other thing that I've found in some communities is that, and I don't know if this is true in Fishkill, is the idea of living over the store. So that's another idea. Is it possible to do a mixed use with an apartment? I lived over a bar.
So did I. Well, I
Okay.
lived over a tailor shop.
All right, so, and it was fine. It was fine. So that's another concept, and another concept is there are an awful lot of really excellent affordable housing groups. It's what they do for a living. There's Kearney, there's Hudson River Housing, I know there's other groups that do this, and sometimes they do have a hard time unless somebody's welcoming, and they do a nice job. And a lot of times, groups like that, they know what they're doing, they know how to respect the zoning and the community. They try to provide services also,
We might have Hudson River Housing at the next board meeting to
Great.
talk about what they do.
Okay, glad to hear that. So anyway, just a couple.
You know, to piggyback off your comments there, I'm working on a project across the river. Well, I'm not going to name where, but it's roughly, we're playing with about 60, 80 units. And water, sewer, gas, the basic stuff there. But what I found interesting was what the municipality was seeking a diversity amongst the actual project itself, which, of course, the developer is open to. And I found that fascinating, is what they were asking for. And so I didn't hear anything about the size of the units being as much as, you know, or as little as 700 square feet, but it wouldn't surprise me going forward,
Yeah,
though.
and a lot of, I know I think it's in the city of Poughkeepsie, they want to make sure there's a variety of housing units, so it isn't a bunch of one bedrooms, so that it's a little bit more of a mix household, possible for families, so.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Schedule, proposed
Can
schedule.
I just say something?
Yes.
Thank you all for your comments, because this plan is all going to be built on this.
Thank you for excellent work, Liz.
Well, I'm trying, but it's, you know, you guys have great ideas, so now it's a matter of weaving them in. So the schedule, do you want to go ahead?
So we're looking at Wednesday, August 24th. There are 5 Wednesdays in August. The board meets on the 3rd Wednesday. Our meeting would be the 4th Wednesday, 7 o'clock right here. And then we're proposing 2 meetings in September, the 2nd and the 4th Wednesday. The 14th and the 20, I'm sorry, yeah, the 14th and the 28th.
So is everybody okay with that schedule, and you're marking your calendars for those 7 PM meetings? And we'll charge forward.
Yes.
First, August 24th, and then September 14th and September 28th.
Yep.
I do have a question about the meetings. Is dinner going to be served?
We'll see.
What about snacks?
How about
We're gonna freeze those sandwiches up.
It'll be an ice cream social. Right, it'll be an ice cream social.
Snacks. I could bring some nuts and dried fruit if you like.
How about people bring their own dinner? I mean, what the heck?
Potluck.
You know?
Nobody does.
Yeah, we don't care if we eat.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice.
Potluck snacks to
okay.
share?
Okay.
What about potluck
But we're
snacks?
gonna make you read the email when he sends it out.
I got lots of bologna for you
Come
for
on,
a
potluck
sandwich.
snacks. Potluck evening snacks.
Cheese on white bread.
Wouldn't that be fun? Everybody brings something they like to eat.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Thank you all.
I never get to vote. I don't get to move, I don't get to second, I don't get to vote.
He was talking to me.
No, I can't.